Welcome to Second Take, the show that focuses on the issues behind the news. Mining project company DRA has shared its excitement about new gold project opportunities opening up in South Africa, as well as Central and West Africa. Martin Creamer joins me in studio to shed light on the company's enthusiasm. Hi Martin.
Hi Tracy.
So what has DRA so excited, especially about the Witwatersrand?
You know, gold is on the lips of many people at the moment. It's one of the commodities that is performing. It has been ticking up in dollars and in local currency, reaching even higher levels. We also must remember that this is the city of gold. So there's huge situations here where we've got tailings dump possibilities. These can be retreated. We see some big retreatment taking place on the East Rand. You know, that pumps like 14 billion rands worth of economic activity into the East Rand. So it's nothing to sneeze at. We see one initially will be probably the same size in the West Rand, but eventually even bigger, the way they're planning to incrementally enlarge it. And then that again will do a lot for the West Rand's economy. So these are important legacies that we have. They have to be removed because you don't want the environmental problems that can arise from dumped material. It's waste really. So let's rather turn the waste into something positive, and that's the first port of call that DRA, the project house, sees as big opportunities. And interestingly, you know, entrepreneurs are coming forward who want to turn these to account. They have acquired the concessions, as we know happened many times over in the past with various entrepreneurs, and they can not only extract the gold, which is obviously the cherry on the top, but there's also, you know, uranium and there's sulfuric acid possibilities. One has to have a deposition site, so one has to have a site on which you can deposit the residue, because sometimes the recovery rate is high, sometimes it's not that high. So you could be delivering a situation where you're not extracting everything out of these, and you need to then deposit them on a site in an environmentally responsible way to make sure that in days in the future, perhaps, you know, you can, with better extraction, you'll get even more out of that. But in the meantime, you unlock property because these dumps are on property often owned in urban areas by other institutions. If you remove that, you give them an opportunity to set off a new property development initiative, as we saw at Crown Mines, where they unlocked a lot of property that we can see turned into entertainment areas and a lot of actually added value property activity.
And how far advanced are DRA's plans?
You know, they have really made a name for themselves. It's a 30-year-old project house that made a name for itself, you know, in platinum particularly, in coal and diamonds. And there was such a barrage of work that they had there that they didn't actually concentrate on gold in their earlier days. In the last 6 to 7 years, you know, with the great financial crisis and then with things getting tighter in the mining industry, in 2010 they decided to go outside of South Africa's borders, and they've done extremely well in Africa, in West Africa and Central Africa. They've tackled from small to big. You know, you get the very big Kabali, which is being done by you know, Randgold Resources, Mark Bristow, in which, you know, hundreds of millions and up to billions are being spent, and they've done a lot of work there, and it's the projects have even gone into, you know, hydropower projects and socially orientated projects, which they're capable of doing, this project house. But along the way, both in Central Africa and West Africa, they've picked up a lot of projects which has given like 7 things on their reference sheet now that they can refer to, working gold projects that are delivering well and giving a return to shareholders, so they can show that as a background now as they swing back into South Africa and see a lot of opportunities here. And they're also referring to, you know, the deposits that we had at depth that were sometimes rated in the very old pennyweight per ton measurements, you know, going back to the late 1800s, where we didn't have the same measurements in grams per ton as we have now, and they used the pennyweight per ton. You see that in Australia they've already started to look at those opportunities. New South Wales, there's a mine that is, it's an exploration site still, but what they're finding is making them ask this question: why was this never developed? So they look at the pennyweight per ton possibilities and see in their vision mines coming through from what were prospects that were not worked in the early days, when there was a much more of a tendency to want to see the gold visibly, and although that wasn't possibly the case in a lot of the instances, they can see now that there is definitely gold there, and one of the companies is already listed on the Australian Stock Exchange to turn some of these pennyweight possibilities and opportunities to account. Now, people are thinking of the same thing in Johannesburg area, with Watersrand area. They know that this is a fantastic ore to process our Witwatersrand ore is a bit of a pleasure compared to some of the places elsewhere in Africa, where it is more difficult to process the ores of West Africa and Central Africa. Tend to have a refractory element to them. Ours are much more pleasing to turn to account, and they're thinking, well, what treasure sits below us here? And there needs to be some sort of initiative, I think, to get those going, because we have shrunk in the gold space. I mean, really, we have a refinery here that has got a capacity to take a much more throughput than it does. And one of the things, when entrepreneurs get into gold, they find, they get payback quickly, because gold can always sell. And, if you've got a refinery in your area, that can refine it for you and get, the money that you need to come back into the organization. It tends to come back quite fast. So it's not an opportunity that we should ignore as a country, also not an opportunity that we should ignore given our history, where we're sitting on the city of gold, and particularly, the surface opportunities, these dumps. Something should be done about them, because if the gold price does go to the level that some people are anticipating, and obviously you can never sort of predict a gold price, and there's always risk, but it does seem that because of the lack of expenditure in exploration, because of the lack of expenditure even in stay in business capital, not enough gold is being produced. So it could be a situation where there is a supply gap, and I think we should be ready to fill that. Because of our background, we know what to do.
And DRA has identified a need for bridge financing. Why is this?
Often these entrepreneurs, they're quite skillful in actually setting up their own funding. They've often got support in that area, but often there's just a little margin that they can't cover, or the banks refuse to cover. And if a company like DRA sees the fundamentals there, because they will be working on that very clearly, and knows that this is an absolute no-brainer, that they can see a return on it, they're prepared to give sort of bridge funding, bridge finance, and to just get the project off the ground. It's not really, finance isn't their core business, but when they're so confident in a project, they're prepared to actually assist with some bridge financing, which sets a project in motion, or it could set the feasibility study, or they throw in the feasibility study that gets paid out of a different fund just to get things going. I think it's a good strategy that they've got there, just to get motion and momentum into what is being done. And once that is clear, that the return is near term, other funders can come in.
The company is also very experienced, having tackled small gold mining projects to very large multi-billion-dollar versions. What are some of its successes?
Yeah, they've had tremendous success in West Africa and Central Africa. 7 plants that they've built there, all working according to plan. Some small ones really returning amazing sort of yields. And even the bigger ones not letting anyone down. So it's a situation now that they've got that expertise, and perhaps they can bring it home to the benefit of our economy. Not that they will be ignoring Africa, because there are already new opportunities coming through in Central Africa and also in East Africa. So that is something that they will also be turning their attention to. But they do see gold in an opportunity spot at the moment, and they want to continue the momentum that they've built up to ensure that they can get into gold just at the right time again, as it lifts and helps our local economy, helps the economies of Africa, and then helps the company, which is a project house, with just shy of 1,000 people here in this region, ready to go, and seeing opportunity and seeing entrepreneurial interest, but also looking to sticking with those customers, because that has been its trademark, DRA. It gets repeat business. And as we saw in the platinum space, it can start small, but it can build these companies up. And that could be the same story with gold. If the messages coming out of the world that gold is going to be in an important position for some time, we could find its price lifting even further in dollars, and each time it lifts, it creates a possibility for new projects to come off the ground, and DRA is a company that can really help in this respect to turn these ores and surface material to positive account.
Thanks for that insight, Martin.
It's a great pleasure, Tracy.
That's it for today. Join us again next week for more news analysis on the South African mining industry.